You can't keep yourself from being the bigness that you truly are. Eventually, we have to surrender to more of our magnificence than we currently have. The bottom line is, the closer we can get to operating as the true essential self, the sooner we begin to navigate life from a perspective that is rich and true and clear. In practical terms, I'm teaching people how to work underneath the layer of the story of their lives into the raw energy. There's an area in our body that corresponds to every challenge that we have. Instead of asking why, just ask, where in my body is this coming from? And as we do drop in more deeply, nothing but healing can happen. Instead of being heaven and earth, there's only one thing happening here, and it's good, and it's you, and it's unfolding. And so let's embrace the wholeness of our being and let that be true and watch what happens in our lives. It changed dramatically.
Dr. Sue Morter, thank you for being here.
Oh my, it's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me. This was absolutely beautiful. A beautiful location. Beautiful to be with you.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I feel like on the path of discovering who we are, there's many different levels at which we can look at the human being from. And I always just love the first principles thinking and trying to see what is like distilling down at our core who we are. And I know so much of your work is like working with us at our most fundamental, essential level, at an energetic level, which is really exciting to me because all paths have value. There's many different ways up the mountain, so to speak. And yet I really appreciate the directness of this path. And so if you were to distill down your life's work, what you feel like you're here to do, how would you explain that?
Yeah, so it's, it changes all the time. I mean, it doesn't change, but it deepens all the time over the years. There's just been an amazing depth of field that has revealed itself in my life. And I know that the bottom line is that the closer we can get to operating as the true essential self, the sooner we begin to navigate life from a perspective that is rich and true and clear and free from the drama. And even if there is a circumstance that we would consider trauma, we can navigate that from an entirely different perspective when we are not operating as the personality, but rather are dropping deeper into really more of a soulful presence. And so, in practical terms, I'm teaching people how to work underneath the layer of the story of their lives into the raw energy and how that energy is moving and what it is here revealing, what it is trying to pierce through and bring to this life experience that we are having. And the more people attune to that, the more masterful they become at making choices that are in alignment with their highest good, where their will becomes aligned with more of a cosmic purpose and process. And so when that starts to enliven in someone, they make choices that work for them, that are sustainable for them, that are healing for them. Not that they're setting out trying to heal themselves, but they're really coming to know themselves. And as such, things heal as a byproduct of that alignment. So it's a rich and beautiful thing that is unfolding.
Yeah. And I love how you broke down from many different, perspectives. We're, especially in the West, hyper-focused on the intellect, and we try to solve our issues or perceive problems from the level of the problems that of where they exist. And instead of solving problems, we can dissolve them by working at a deeper level. And so I love your framework of soul, body, mind. In a society, again, that is so focused on the analytical way of deducing things, working at the level of the mind to start with, why is that an important reframe to go in that order?
When we start at mind, body, soul, we wrestle with the conflict that generates that we mostly step into because of a disconnect that happens early upon our arrival here. We sort of land and splat, and in the splat and the dispersal, where the mind and the body and the breath all go in different directions, we attach to the mind as a survival, instinct. We're trying to figure out what we should do, how do we fit in, all those survival instincts that we bring forward. And when we flip it over and recognize that starting with the true essence of who we are, recognizing that the soul speaks to the body and the body speaks to the mind. And if the mind will listen to the body, it will be able to learn the language of the soul, and that reintegration can occur. So it's sort of like just jumping through the threshold and just saying, rather than trying to work to get somewhere, why don't we just be there and start interpreting and processing life from that perspective? We are soulful energy that has presented itself here, and we have a body and a mind to help us navigate the terrain. We think we are a mind that has a body and a soul spirit somewhere that is hanging out that I'll get to know someday. And that perspective is the cause of the suffering that is happening in our greater humanity. We are sitting in the wrong seat. So I just have people get up out of that seat, come over, sit down in the true seat of the soul, and allow for an entirely different viewpoint, a vantage point that stirs from the depths of our being different types of thoughts, different types of ideas and inspirations, because they're based in the stillness at the bottom of the river instead of the ripples that are occurring along the surface that cause for our environment to have an effect, a greater effect on our disposition than it really needs to. So by flipping that around, we're able to truly set forth as the one who came, as the one who is here for the life experience that it came in to have, rather than trying to figure that out for the rest of our lives.
Mm. Yeah, it's one of those things, I think, when people start to embark upon a spiritual journey and they, for example, maybe walk into a gift shop and they see the quote, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience."
Yeah.
And a lot of these sayings, which, sound really great on paper, but what I love about so much of your work is breaking it down to really what it actually means and how our energetic system, is made up, and how this has been, known for thousands of years, and in a society that, again, doesn't really value the internal inner contemplative practices and ways of understanding in these wisdom traditions, people can brush it to the side. And so I love the groundedness and practicality to the work in which you bring. In the East, there's like kind of two ways of knowing in terms of their understanding, from vidya and gyan. Those are two terms that I really love to think about this from, because we're all familiar with vidya, which is more like book knowledge, things we learn from a podcast like this. But gyan is like wisdom and knowledge that can't be transmitted. It's experiential understanding.
Mm.
And I think, again, a lot of what I hear and see you write and talk about is this type of knowing, the type of experience that can't be necessarily logically deduced or explained, but is a very real qualia. It's a very real experience within human consciousness. And so I think this podcast is going to really serve people to be able to start to tap into that energy, because that field that exists to all of us is such a more abundant place to live life from. I really love this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson that says, "In the mind of geniuses, we find our own neglected thoughts."
Ah, yes.
And it's
Yes,
speaking to this field of knowledge that we can all tap into, that is available to us all. And so how would you think about that kind of switch from only valuing knowledge that is of the intellect to a deeper sense of knowing that maybe isn't empirically rationalized as often, but is nonetheless more valuable?
I think it's the most brilliant choice that a person can make, to even allow themselves to honor these deeper knowings that are coming through every one of us, above and beyond even their educated mind and what they've come to know. So much of what we're programmed to think and process in certain ways limits our perceptive field in so many. We're tapping upon circuits that are wiring together, and we're running on these educated programs that have every opportunity to cause us to override this deep wisdom that's trying to rise within each of us. And the wisdom isn't just our own personal experienced wisdom. It is the wisdom, it's ancestral wisdom. It is truly cosmic intelligence that is trying to come through this body as a gateway into this life experience. We when we look at what science would say, that there are billions of bits of information bombarding us every millisecond onto this field that is churning and turning, and this toric field movement is taking that information and processing it and allowing it to reveal forward into the projection onto a movie screen that we're walking into every day of our lives. And if we're only operating on the level of our educated mind, we miss billions of bits of information that are trying to be translated through this body that is built for this, through the process of what we know as epigenetics, these little antennas that are on the surface of every cell in our body. These antennas are picking up on information from our environment. And that information is not the educated mind. That information is this cosmic intelligence, the universal intelligence. The immaculate mind is this. And so these little antennas pick up on this energy, translate it as in message form to the internal workings of the cell that they're attached to, which produces certain chemistries, neurotransmitters, etc., that rise, give a bubbling up to the surface of our awareness, influencing the kinds of thoughts that we think, the kinds of impressions that we have, the interpretations of the circumstances that we're experiencing, etc. So if we're dialing into the deep core body, we're going to be enhancing and magnifying this ripple up effect, this gathering and rising of this deeper intelligence that allows for us, that is combined with wisdom and beauty and a greater love. It's not just information. By the time it passes through our gut brain and the brain in our heart and is being filtered and influenced through what has meaning to us, it develops its animation in a richness that gives us life power to choose toward what is beautiful and good and true and full and abundant, instead of choosing toward what is smart and survival based and going to get me ahead and get me by. And so when an individual gives themselves permission to listen within, they're actually in touch with billions times more information than the mind alone can hold, through its education and its reverence and reference to the things that we have been taught. It plays a role. It's just not enough to give us the whole experience that we're capable of having. Otherwise, we start racking our brains for the smart thing to do and what is next, and trying to push the river in ways that are controlling of something that, if we would learn to surrender to it instead and collaborate with it, we would have the life that mind alone is so desperately seeking and trying to generate for itself. So my short answer is, great idea. I think it's a great idea that someone would surrender and let something other than, their educated mind have a way with them.
Yeah, I think of how often we suffer what is an incredible, immense gift. Like our memory and our imagination make us unique on this planet, and our capacity for both, and they animate what it is to be human in so many ways. But yet we it's like holding a knife from the sharp end instead of the handle. Like we're holding these incredible things wrong. We're so overly identified with our intellectual thoughts and mind, and so putting it back in its right place is the invitation here. And it's tough to do that when we're so overly identified with our five sensory experience, missing all these other billion bits of information that is so powerful and has immense answers for our life and can point us in directions. And I just think of how often we're missing what is just around the corner of like great gifts and opportunities and people we can meet, and healing, like spontaneous healing, miraculous moments from going inwards. And so I suppose when you think about how enchanting our five sensory experience is, that plugs us into this reality, which is incredible and amazing and so helpful, but it also, it can be very illusory if we don't also turn the gaze inwards. What do you think about that kind of dichotomy?
Well, it's this both and, right? It's like when we start to recognize what you're describing, and we want to, I know for me, 25 years ago, when I first started meditating and coming into another realm, and then these exalted experiences started happening, multidimensional, transcendental experiences that were occurring, I immediately wanted to just meditate all the time. I just like, let this world go. Let me drop into this beautiful space that I was discovering and the realms that it had to offer. And huge openings were happening that were blowing my circuits that my five senses were used to operating on. So I had no choice. I couldn't use them for a while. There were times that I couldn't get out of bed because the vibration was so intense and so blissful and so beautiful. I didn't want to get out of bed. But when I did have to go back to the clinic and be, working with patients and managing life in those terms, I had to be very selective in how I, went about doing that in ways that were comforting to the system that was trying to adapt to this. What I came to know was that, the embodiment of what I was experiencing in these transcendental states was only made possible when I would engage in the outer world to its most refined capacity. I could sit and meditate and enjoy all sorts of realms. And when it comes time to get out into the world, we have to infuse that light or that energy into the circuits that we're used to running on with our five senses. And as a byproduct, those five senses get up-leveled and we become enhanced in a totally different way. And when someone is able to blend both sets of circuits into one, we start to move as the bridge between the worlds, recognizing that there's really only one world here. We just were leaving half of it out, more than half of it out, but a portion of it out as we were trained to operate on our five senses because our parents and their parents and their parents were doing the same. So the idea of two worlds becoming one is simply awakening to the fact that we were limiting and marginalizing the greater part of who we are. So by bringing them together, it is, instead of being heaven and earth, it's like heaven, earth. It's like there's only one thing happening here, and it's good, and it's you, and it's unfolding. And so let's embrace the wholeness of our being and let that be true and watch what happens in our lives. They change dramatically.
I think so much of the path is the integration and synthesis between the two of a heightened sense of experience or state awareness, and then the integration of that awareness. And you had a very prominent, and I'm sure have had many, expanded state experience that kind of blew you out of your waters, for lack of a better term. I would love for you, if you're open to sharing, because that was really such a big, catalyst for all the work that you've been doing over the past couple of decades. So would you share that initial story? Like, what happened to you?
Sure, totally. Blew my socks off. If I was wearing socks at the time, I don't remember. But I had a desire to learn to meditate because I was getting migraine headaches. I was treating patients in the clinic all the time. I was just feeling like there was something on the top of my head that was a ceiling that wasn't supposed to be there. I just had this sensation all the time. And then I started getting migraine headaches, and I was missing work a couple days a week just because of the pain. Now, when I would go to the clinic, I could help people with their migraine headaches, but then I would wake up, a few days later and just not be able to get out of the bed. It was so intense. Dark room, lights out, curtains drawn, that kind of state. And so I was drawn to meditate, and I was actually attempting to meditate as a means of managing a pain pattern. And so I went into this meditative, place, into a state with a group of people I had heard about, and I instantly, in these guided meditations, started having these transcendental experiences to the point that I knew that this was something here for me, and it was more than I bargained for, but I knew. And so I went a couple of times. This teacher was visiting, was from out of the country, and I found out where they were going to be next and went. And about the third time that I sat down into, a meditative state, I had a an instant opening to an entirely different realm. I instantly was exalted above the earth. The earth was beneath me so far, it was about the size of a marble, and I was embedded into it. I was me, but I wasn't in a body. I was a ray of light, and I was in a light so brilliantly bright, it was 10 times brighter than the brightest day in the desert that I had ever seen. And yet I wasn't trying to get away from it or shield myself from it. I just was open and in it and so incredibly free. And I could see 360 degrees, actually spherically, around me. There was a beautiful pink iridescent horizon between this brilliantly bright light and a very bright light below this horizon. And every time I took a breath, this horizon would rise like this pink iridescent blanket of something. And I knew that this light was becoming love as it was passing through this system that I was, and that every time I took a breath, the degree to which I could take a breath would determine how much of this light was moving through me, and it was coming to the planet and, feeding the planet in some way. Now, this wasn't induced by anything. It was just consciousness doing this thing. And the most important thing for me in the moment was I knew that I had always been there. This was the truth of who I was. It was like, oh, this is what's really going on. And I knew that this life in this body was something I was projecting into this other dimension as an experience to bring this light that I was into the place that this physical existence was operating as. There was nothing missing. There was nothing broken. There was nothing to become. There was nothing to achieve, to accomplish. It was wholly whole, just completely complete. And most importantly, I knew that every one of us was this, and it was reflecting of the eternal nature of who and what we truly are as presence of light coming into form, bringing the light on this frontier of consciousness, if you will, some sort. And I came down out of that experience and opened my eyes, and this teacher was sitting, in the front of the room and locked on to me with this huge smile, totally knowing, what had happened. Now, I should have set this up a little better beforehand. I was being asked to do things by this teacher. I was an achiever, and I was, trying to do everything right, and she was on to me. So she gave me a list of things to do that were literally impossible to do in the amount of time that she gave me to do them. And, at some point, I just got completely frustrated, running around behind the scenes while everybody else was here in this beautiful meditative retreat. And I finally just, put the list down, which is very unusual for me, and just walked into the room and, just said, the heck, it was a little more explicit than that, but the heck with whatever is going on. I'm just going to go sit and meditate with everybody else. And so I was claiming something for myself in a way that hadn't been the case in my life. And we were chanting, and so I was regulating all sorts of things that I now know what was happening, but I didn't at the time. I was just innocently, purely in a devotional state, trying to open up to something that was calling me very deeply. And so then I sit down and am chanting, and then boom, that's when this big opening happens. And so I knew in that moment that she knew that she got me. She broke the pattern enough that I was available, and I was surrendered into what was truly trying to happen and come through my system that I could awaken to. And so as I, as the weeks and months and years would pass, I became very devoted to discovering, unpacking, how did that happen? How do I recreate that for myself? How do I share that with others? And, what is it? What's the purpose? And what's really going on here? So it became a beautiful conversation that just started unfolding with my patients and clients, and then people started asking me to come and, speak to their groups and so on. And it has become a global conversation just based upon these openings that we can generate for ourselves. And I find that as with experiences like that, as with the science that we can study, what really matters is the wisdom to integrate them and to infuse them together. Otherwise, it's just information or something that we're seeking to try to accomplish or achieve or to acquire or to arrive at. And it's about neither. It's about all of that and you, your purpose, what you're doing here, what it is that you are here to feel into and to awaken to, and ultimately to bring into this reality as the gift that we are on this frontier that we're on. So,
so
that's a lot.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I could, I imagine people listening to this maybe be like, oh, I want an experience like that. And what's interesting is that it was the lack of the I seeking for an experience that was where that experience was born out of,
Yes.
for you.
Yes.
And I'm just curious, after that experience, because when you have a truly transformative experience, like transformation is when a seed turns into a tree. Like they don't really resemble each other at all.
Yeah.
There's traces of each other in both, but one thing transmutes into another. And having a taste of your true nature that is beyond the intellect, where you viscerally feel it. The Oracle in the Matrix says, from your balls to your bones. It's like,
right.
Is it true knowing?
Mm-hmm.
That changes us on contact immediately, and I think of how important creating an environment and conditions and spiritual practices in our life to get us to that point where we have that taste, the experiential knowing beyond the mind, and how that is worth infinitely more than reading 1,000 books on the topic.
Yes. Yeah, indeed. Different world.
And so I'm curious, after that process, both what do you feel like shifted in you energetically, and how did you try, if you did, to understand what happened?
After that, I was obsessed with figuring out, how did that happen and how can I do that again? I just knew that I was supposed to know that. And so it became very internal inquiry based. It was, I had one eye on the inside all the time. Every time I was working with someone, I started teaching meditation experiences for people, teaching classes, training people how to surrender into that deep space so that this could unfold. And it was very interesting. The experiences themselves didn't change me. They awakened what was possible in me in a way that I wasn't aware of. I didn't even know to try for something like that. I had friends that I was meeting that were meditators for 30 years and talking about all sorts of experiences, but I had no knowing that there was some goal that I was shooting for called enlightenment or, some kind of additional realm. I was just trying to get rid of my headaches. I was just like, whatever, I didn't know. And so having that awakening, these realizations had an impact on my perceptive field of what is possible or who we really are. But as far as it changing my headaches or healing other things that it came to heal, it wasn't until I focused on embodiment that anything actually transitioned in my life, transformed in my life in any appreciable amount, other than the fact that I was walking around with my mouth hanging open about, do you have any idea what's really going on here? Do you have any idea what's really going on here? It's like, no. So what happened was I recognized that by getting more in my body with what I now was aware of and with the frequencies that were now running more enlivened in my system, I started healing not only my headaches, but I was born with a scoliosis, and this scoliosis started healing. I started sitting in meditation. My body would start to rotate. It would just want to turn as if it wanted it to turn all the way around. So I finally figured out that I could let it turn all the way around with my consciousness, even though the physical body wasn't. But then something would unwind physically inside my system. And as the months would progress, it would vary in different levels of my body, where rotations or side bendings, or I would be in the middle of a deep state of meditation, and all of a sudden my body would just fold over, just rapidly fold over, and then want to rotate and rise up in an entirely different fashion. And I started to know what was happening. I knew that it was unwinding the distortions in the field that were there as I was born, there in my mother's womb, there as a point of my coming in to do such things that I didn't know at the time which or if both were involved, but I knew that some distortion in my own field was being corrected. And what happened was curvatures in my spine were corrected because I was allowing this breath to guide what was happening as I was in a meditative state, but learning how to be in my body at the same time. Prior to that, I would shoot up and out and go on these all sorts of exotic experiences through the ethereal realms and have all sorts of experiences happening after that initial big one. It was like the floodgates opened and I was going on a ride every time I closed my eyes, it seemed like. And yet it didn't change my life until I focused on drawing myself more deeply and anchoring myself in the body. As such, the body field began to adapt to the perfection that is occurring as it's pouring into this dimension. It was as if I was allowing that perfecting template to drop more deeply into the physical dimension because of my surrender, because of my awareness. I was raised in a family of quantum science. My father was a pioneer in energy medicine, and he was also a chiropractor. And I went to school and became a chiropractor, so I was very educated in the physiology and anatomy and the neuro function that happens in the body and natural healing. So that was my come from when all of this came together. So I was able to support what was trying to happen through me. And as a byproduct of that, I turned on a healer within my system that hadn't been enlivened before. So not only did the migraines heal, the scoliosis heal itself. Also, when I would go through an incident or an injury of some sort, I broke bones twice in the next couple of years that happened, and not big fractures, but compression fractures that would have been isolated and casted and those kinds of things. And I was able to just work right through it with yoga and meditation and without having to go through the traditional means. I feel younger. I have an endless supply of energy that is always available to share this information with people and to move through my life. And all of it is because truly I know of embodying these higher frequencies of energy on a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more of a conscious level. And that we each have the capacity to do this is the driving force in my life. I'm just compelled to share and to turn that on for people because it's been an amazing transformation in my life.
Yeah, that transformation, I can only imagine how it, directly inspires you to support people with that process. Because when you experience a truth that's deeper than the previous one you were living, you're like, well, why don't we work at a deeper level? Almost like Russian dolls that are nested in each other. Instead of, again, working with our problems at the level of the story in which they exist, working at the things that enable them at a deeper level. And I think of like the 5 sheaths or koshas in the yogic tradition of understanding, we in the West think we have like a mind, we have a body, and like that's pretty much kind of it, right?
Yeah.
And starting to look at these contemplative practices and yogic sciences that have been sharing for thousands of years how we have many different kinds of bodies, from the Annamaya kosha, which is our food body, to our energetic and mental body, and to our bliss body and the cultural body. And so how do you think of that when we really kind of lack the scientific external instrumentation to be able to sort of validate these things, but we are gaining more and more the capacity to kind of do that from the outside in. But from the inside, we can experience these different bodies. And so what do you think of that? Like, how do you see the human being as it is and their kind of the sheaths of the bodies in which they exist?
Yes. I completely know how valuable it is for someone to come to know these components of our being. If science hasn't measured those frequencies to perfectly align with what the wisdom of the ages has provided in Eastern culture, it's only a matter of time. Science 100 years ago couldn't tell us that there was anything in between the particles of an atom. There was no way to know. It was just empty space. And now we know there's an entire universe going on in that empty space, and that actually we reside there. And so it's just a matter of time. I can tell you that as my own third eye was opening, I began to have access to a structure, an anatomy, a sacred architecture on the interior of my system that I could see. I could see these images as my eyes would close. I could see these structures that were actually what I now then later equated were cross sections or experiences of the tissues that are orchestrated in this divine system that we are physiologically. And I was witnessing these structures from the inside, seeing it. And because I used to wonder, how did they know about these things before there was the technology to dissect the human system and really see what was there with our five senses? And what I know is that these seers were able to perceive our internal anatomy and the functionality of it before we had microscopes and before we were into surgical procedures to do so. And the beauty of this is this all-seeing eye that is multidimensional, this third eye, this pineal functionality allows us to truly be here and be there and be there and be there simultaneously as it turns on and can be integrated and supported by the other circuitry that we're used to running on. So regarding the koshas as you're referencing them, I know that we begin as Anandamaya kosha, that we are bliss at our foundation. I know this firsthand. When I was in these most exalted states for the first time, I was in such a state of bliss. I didn't care if I ever plugged in my five senses again. It was like, do not talk to me. Do not get me out of this bed. Do not pull me out of meditation. I am in the truth, and I'm good. Don't worry about me. And they're like, no, you have to eat. We have to be careful. We have to be sure that you're okay. And we have instructions to take care of you. And I'm like, I'm fine. For real, I'm fine. And so, then the witness, this observing self, is next in priority. And this next layer out is that. And it is only then thereafter that we develop thoughts and emotions and responses to the ripple effect, to this deep sense of ananda, of bliss that we truly are. Then it further differentiates out into the systems, the channels of energy flowing, etc., and then all the way out to our survival self that's engaging here in the physical world with our instinctive responses. But this whole spirit being that is deeper than that is what these layers of our being are speaking of, charting for us. So while science isn't measuring those directly, we do have the ability to measure the difference between being in the pure presence versus thinking versus actioning, etc. We know they're in different vibrational frequencies. And, the key to us in this discussion is that we come to know each of those vibrational frequencies of ourselves. Because when we know them, we can manage them. When we know them, we can orchestrate, not to control them, but to allow them to collaborate and to contribute to what we see when we look out into the world. If I know myself as Ananda, that has an ability to have consciousness observing and stewarding this out into the physical world, I approach the physical world differently than if I think I'm of that physical world trying to find my Ananda someday, right? So the person who is seated out in these outer realms, and we all are to some degree, as that's why we're here, working it out, discovering how to build the circuitry to infuse and to integrate and to embody all of it. And the parts of us, if the greater part of us is seated as the personality, the protective personality, the performing personality, the one who struggles or is trying to, live to fight another day kind of thing, is up for a beautiful awakening when we begin to find these deeper and deeper layers, if one at a time or if all at once in some, big opening like I had, doesn't matter. That what matters is that we know that there are these multiple dimensions of me, and that I am by my true nature intended to know them all. I'm not asking for something out of reach or out of touch, or it isn't inappropriate for me to know, to sense, and to feel, and to pursue. It's our destiny to do so, and to give permission for that to happen is one of the greatest things that we would do, that we could possibly do. So lastly, if there's a scientific mind listening, the greatest thing that we can do is to surrender that for just a moment and explore, who was I before I needed evidence? Who was I before the thoughts that would make a distinction between two different worlds? Who was I before that separation? Because the truth is, we come from that which is undivided. So somewhere along the line, we divided it. And we didn't do it consciously, but it happens by nature of coming here. And it's part of the game, is to put them back together again, is to pull it back together and to let all of that become me. And the individual who's not scientific based and avoids science and is like, no, I just want to meditate. I just want to love you. I just want to be, is onto it. But if they don't engage these other sets of circuits, then we have to stay on the mountaintop. We can't come down into the village and make a difference in the world and have all of the full experience that we're capable of until we infuse it into a both and of some sort. That was a long answer to your question.
That was great. No, that was all needed, all amazing. Yeah, I think of what this perspective does in terms of how it translates to how we look at our body and the root causes of disease and illness. And I remember in my conversation with Rupert Spire, I think we talked about how suffering is the cost of admission for the illusion of separation. Like the perceiving us as separate, divided selves is useful for being in this realm, but you're inviting the perspective to come back to realize the oneness that we're actually a part of. There's no necessarily clear boundary between me and the external world. From an energetic standpoint, absolutely. Also biologically, there is no actual separation, even though it really looks like it. Yeah. And so when you're talking about this, how does that change what we look at? How we look at disease, how we look at the body? When you're inviting this perspective of more of a root cause and working things at a more fundamental level, how does that change things?
So, I used to get a bronchial infection every winter, every time. It was always happening. Count on it. Year after year after year after year. And as this began to happen, not only the headaches and the scoliosis, but those kinds of patterns just started to diffuse. They just dissolved. There wasn't a sense of self that belonged to the world where that would happen every winter. And that sense of self was realigned, was just adjusted differently. And I know that even when someone begins to deepen their inquiry or to feel into the depths of their being, these types of patterns begin to shift because we hold on to the patterns of who we think we are as a means of stabilizing ourselves, because we're pretty vast, we're pretty big, and here we are coming into this physical dimension, and we land, we splat, we don't know who we are, so we're like holding on to whatever we can grip, whatever we can, and as such, we become attached to beliefs and ideas and images of who and what we think we are and life is, etc. And so in order to deepen, we have to soften that grip to be able to drop in. And that is where, many people are operating in an attempt to navigate, is it this or is it that? And the answer is yes, it is this and it is that. It is the depths of our being, and it is the patterns that we're here to dissolve. And as we do drop in more deeply, nothing but healing can happen. It has to happen because we're not holding on to the distortion. And so we're allowing the perfecting field that is pouring through this system always to pour without disturbing it, without distorting it. And as those distortions diminish, the flow of this energy bioenergetically, the energy as it moves through body form, the essence, the spirit, however you would reference it, as it moves through this body form, it begins to generate a perfecting presence. So healing happens as a byproduct of this. Someone can go to the doctor and be given a diagnosis, and it might not be a comfortable diagnosis, one that they're now realizing they're going to have to make some decisions about course of action that they're going to take. And some people in that moment walk out of that office, and I used to see this in my clinic all the time, often. They would walk out of the clinic, not our clinic, but a clinic where they received a diagnosis about a chronic degenerative disease or, a serious life-threatening condition. And they would hit the door and walk out toward their car and say, that is not my story. It is not going to happen to me. That is not my path. This is not true for me. They weren't trying to control it. They just somehow knew that was not going to be their path. And I've had clients that were working with months to live that 15 years later are having conversation about what happened within them that shifted in that moment. What was it that took place that allowed them to release the individual who worked its way into that diagnosis and to be able to know that there was another version of themselves, even if they didn't know what it was, but they knew it. And I've also had, patients that were completely intimidated and buckled over by that same kind of diagnosis that took them down a path of lots of different modalities to address the symptoms, trying to address the cause, but not ever getting to it. They would show up in my clinic wanting solutions that they hadn't found through the traditional means that they had pursued, and finally recognizing that it was ultimately a decision about surrendering into a deeper version of themselves that would allow for healing to finally take place. That it was a surrender into a version of themselves that they had no intellectual understanding of. They had no awareness of its existence until they began to just drop in. And as such, they were able to stabilize there, letting go of some of the things they were holding on to before, which allowed the whole thing to turn inside out. This situation, the system, to now start functioning the way that it was intended to function, as a self-healing, self-regulating, self-illuminating system of multidimensionality, of divine proportion, I should say.
Hey fam, you've probably heard me share about how when I meditate in the morning, I usually stack it with red light. So if you don't know, there are over 4,000 peer-reviewed studies on red light therapy showing benefits for cellular healing, skin health by stimulating collagen, testosterone, sleep, mood, and a lot more. It's always a great way to get healthy light exposure in the morning before sunrise, especially during the colder months where there's less sun outside. Just 10 to 20 minutes a day is all it takes. If you're looking for a red light device, BonCharge is a solid option. They have the lowest EMF levels on the market. There's no flicker, both near infrared and red light in one lightweight device. They ship worldwide, have an easy return policy, and also an array of other science-backed wellness products that you can check out. And if you want to, just go to boncharge.com/know thyself and use coupon code Know Thyself to save 15%. That's BonCharge.com/know thyself and use code Know Thyself to save 15%. BonCharge products are all HSA, FSA eligible, giving you tax-free savings of up to 40%. I hope you dig it. Back to the show. Yeah, the Western medical system has bared so many incredible fruits, and yet the moment we identify with a diagnosis is almost in many ways concretizing it in our reality. And, we know how just the mere thought of something can turn on our sympathetic system, right? We can become stressed out simply by thinking of something, just like we can become aroused by thinking of something, so we understand how our thoughts affect our physiology and our body. But you're kind of inviting a little, like, even go one more step out. Like, there are these energetic patterns in our circuitry, in our deeper sense of self-identity and beliefs, which are later down the cascade affecting our physiology, creating disease, which we might be, diagnosed as a certain illness or cancer, which immense compassion for anybody who gets that. It's like a very confusing and difficult thing to wrestle with. But it is an empowering thing to see, okay, to heal something, you really need to address it at the root cause. Mm-hmm. If a tree has leaves that are dying and turning brown, no matter how much spray paint of green spray paint you put on the leaves, right, it's not going to heal it, right? Yeah. It might look like it for a while until we heal the underlying root issues. And so that's why I really love the feeling code in your book and what you share as well, to work and ask when resistance comes up in our day-to-day life. It might not be this dense, gross diagnoses, but the simple resistance or stressors that come up, to not ask why, but to ask where, and to work with it at the level of sensation on the body. Mm-hmm. So can you share a little bit more about how you think about that in that process?
Sure. There's an area in our body that corresponds to every challenge that we have. Every time we bump up against something and we feel overwhelmed by it, or we feel consumed by our circumstances, or it could even be a diagnosis, when we receive information or think thoughts on our own, if those are thoughts or experiences of intimidation, where we feel buckled over, or we want to withdraw, or we feel charged or triggered in some way, it is because of a lack of circuitry in place energetically that isn't allowing this entire toric field system that I briefly mentioned earlier to do its thing. It's not allowed to flow in the way that it's intended to. Think of it like a pothole in the highway. You got to drive around it. And so we drive around these gaps in the highway as this highway is trying to rise up through our system. We divert around them, but the constant diversion, creates a wobble in the rising energy of the way this system is designed to be functioning. For instance, the energy is supposed to rise from tailbone up through your central channel, through the sushumna, through the spinal column. You could think of it that way, and exhale out the crown, and then it runs around the outside of the body and it re-enters in the body at the level of the tailbone and comes up again, and just is recycling constantly. It's constantly pouring in from overhead and going all the way through what would become a body. It hits the earth and is stepped down for human consumption. And it rises up through this toric field, recycling and recycling and recycling. This system is the master system of our body. It develops all the other systems that differentiate into an immune system and a digestive system and a respiratory and a cardiovascular. All of these systems are an offshoot of this basic foundational energetic system flow called this toric field. And so that uprising energy has to come up on a smooth highway if we're ever going to transcend the primitive brain and get up into the high brain centers where we can relate to a life that works, a life that is beautiful and good and sharing and communicative and free and embracing and an expression of ourselves as a divine presence on the planet. Okay, so that system's supposed to be working. However, if we have areas that we've shut down in the course of our lives where we tried to love and it didn't work out, boom, we shut down in this heart area, or we tried to trust our gut and it flopped or didn't work for whatever reason, boom, we shut down in this feeling area of the body. Variety, infinitesimal variety of ways that these interruptions can occur. The bottom line is, if this rising energy is diverting through all these areas where the circuits are shut down, it creates a wobble. And that wobble of the rising energy creates a distortion in the field. Now I'm sitting here in a distorted field, looking out into a world that I see in a distorted fashion. And I see that it's all out to get me. Nobody cares. It's all, it's all up to me. I got to carry the weight of the world on my back, whatever it might be. The ways that we self-talk will reveal to us the distortions that exist in our field. So in the feeling code, what we're doing is saying, instead of jumping up into your head when something has a hold of you and saying, why do you do that? Or what's wrong with me? Why do I do this all the time? Instead of asking why, just ask, where in the body do I sense a charge? Do I feel a tightness in my gut or my throat or my chest? Or if I don't feel anything, if I just ask the question, where in my body is this coming from? And my mind, because mind, body, and breath are actually one thing, they're just differentiated into different vibrational frequencies of the one system, it's automatically going to respond as soon as you ask. Your mind all of a sudden will be in your throat, or your mind all of a sudden will be paying attention to your solar plexus or in your heart or in your gut in some way. These different energy centers are representing different levels of consciousness. So if we just ask, okay, where in my body could I build the circuits to better be able to handle this situation, right? So it's immediately going to answer. It's like, oh, I thought you'd never ask. It's right here. It's that lump in your throat that you've been trying to get away with. It's that knot in your stomach you've been trying to get rid of forever or whatever. So what I then do have people do is hug the area that their mind just went to, or if they feel some charge in the body, and then I teach them how to anchor themselves in the body so that they can do this with stability and consistency and reproducibility. And while they're hugging that particular area on the inside, just kind of gently squeezing the muscles around the area and start breathing up and down this central channel, what begins to happen is their consciousness, instead of moving around this area, starts to feel comfortable moving through the area. And we're actually learning to draw the breath right through the areas that we've been sidestepping, that have been contributing to our long-standing issues, our long-standing things that we avoid, our long-standing triggers or charges that exist in our lives. We start filling in the gaps so that we are more comfortable with more of life as we are intended to be, because we're taking the distortion out of the field by taking the wobble out of this drive shaft of the whole thing that is this central channel, this river of life that was, referenced in India as the Sushumna and as the god Hapi in Egypt. That was even before, predating these kinds of studies of the development of consciousness that were happening in ancient India. They were dawning in ancient Egypt, and so right in that era, those eras, I should say, we were gifted with the ability to adapt immediately based upon our external environment to build a more highly functioning system in here that allows us to proceed here in this dimension as the full capacity of a higher realm being that we are, a quantum being, a divine being, however one likes to think about it. It's all one thing that is being spoken about in different ways, right?
Yeah, so I think of like a crink in a hose where it takes more energy for that water to push through, and that's going to create resistance. Think of like our body as a vehicle, and I think of like an actual car vehicle, and how if there is, if there's just not properly oiled, for example, or if there's a misalignment in the wheel rotation, it's requiring more energy to do the same job. Mm-hmm. And so these like diversions in our energy field take more energy to uphold, which gives us less life force energy for all of our organs to function and to just and live. And so I'm curious, what do you think, what advice would you give to somebody that's finding persistence and some sort of resistance in their body? Like, for example, I kind of had this right shoulder thing for a while, and kind of my right side, some more tension, and I've done a lot of body work, and I think I made some progress with it. I feel like there's deeper energetic things that are, of course, like we're speaking to, must be tied to it. And so you said, instead of asking why, ask where. So I can, feel where the resistance is in the body, hug it energetically like you're speaking to, give attention to it. And is there anything else that you would provide as an immediate practice or just direction to explore for somebody that wants to get deeper into dissolving kind of a root issue?
Get into that. Yes. So, when we say where in the body could I build the circuits, if I just want to clarify this, that you might feel resistance in this area already, but that's not what I'm speaking about. Where else in the body could I build some circuits that would facilitate the infusion of my full life force to move through this area and not get blocked in it? So your attention might take you to the pelvic floor. It might take you to your solar plexus, seemingly completely unrelated to the right upper body shoulder area, but very much related to why the energy isn't flowing through that area as freely as it could. So be allowing of it to your attention to go completely to some other part of the body when you're asking the question, where in the body could I build the circuitry, or kind of build a bridge through a pothole kind of thing, a crevice, or to open something that's been overly contracted elsewhere in the body that might be contributing to this symptom pattern that you're experiencing. So always stay aware in that way that it could be completely removed from the symptom area that we're experiencing the energy blockage. Another thing that comes to mind instantly when it's shoulders and neck and arms and hands and wrists and elbows, etc. This is our manifesting, our offering come to the world comes this way. And so if it's on the right side of the body, it has a lot to do with my freely offering my gifts and talents and all that I am here to bring without reserve, without hesitation. If it was on the other side, it would be more about, I'm just not receiving, I'm just not accepting, I'm just not embracing, or maybe I don't know, or I'm frustrated with not knowing kind of what I'm here to do and that kind of thing. So in what you're describing, just with very little that I know about the whole picture, I would say that while you're sitting to ask this question about where in the body, I would include and infuse some thoughts about all of the ways that I'm to be expressing and sharing my offering into the world. If you're in debate about any part of that, take your foot off the brake, take your foot off the clutch, and just let it roll, just let it flow, because everything boils down to consciousness, truly. I mean, it's what science is showing us today, is that the foundation of our reality is energy that is awake. It's consciousness. It's based in consciousness itself, and that this reality, this agreed upon reality that we are living in, is exactly that. We're just projecting it into this movie that we're all participating in. And as such, we have aspects of that reality that we fully embrace and aspects that we're trying to step into or trying to allow to be true for us too. The majority of the time, if not pre-verbal and pre-mobile, they go back to before you're 10 years old, likely before you're 5 years old, something establishing that is why you came, but initially was interpreted as a resistance, a rejection of something, a pullback, a retreat from until you got your bearings. And if all that went in at a subconscious level, and then this trap door slams shut because it was overwhelming, until the trap door opens, we can't get to that pattern and unpack it. We can't get there with our mind. We have to get there with the feeling self.
Yeah.
And so I would just add that, you have amazing energy, you have amazing brilliance, you have it going on. So I could totally see that there would be this running question of, should I bring everything that I know out as far as it can go because of wanting to be, whatever, respectful or be in tandem with life in some way, etc. And those subtle and beautiful intentions can be what sets us back and stops the energy from flowing exactly as freely and potently as it can and shall. It's your destiny. You can't keep yourself from being the bigness that you truly are, even if you give it a good shot for several decades. Eventually we have to surrender and just let it be a little bit more and a little bit more. And this is true for everyone. It's true for all of us. Eventually we have to surrender to more of our magnificence than we currently have. And as we do, it unbinds this energy and lets it flow. It's like what you mentioned earlier, there's this governing thing, and our five senses have served us well to figure out where is the self so that I can figure out and anchor myself here. And then I have to forget that self so that I can be a bigger self, and let this one come through and infuse itself into this five sensory being that we thought we were. And it's like, whoa, how does it all happen? But it will happen, and it does happen. And as it happens, the experience of, I work with a lot of people all the time, in large groups of people and in smaller intimate groups over the years, and with individuals for many, many years. It always boiled down to, I'm more better than I thought I was, basically. There's more going on here, not from an egoic sense, but from a deeper level of full-on acceptance of what I'm doing here, what I'm made of, and what I'm here to bring to this project awakening for humanity. So, yeah. I mean, it emanates off of you. It's like, I can't not feel the bigness of your being. So I say, just embrace it.
Thank you. I appreciate that and received. And just as a side, also reflected back to you, you meet so many people in the podcast space and interesting characters. And there's that saying, those who know knows who know. Like, peace knows peace, stillness knows stillness, and clear energy knows clear energy. And so it's just a privilege and an awesome chance to meet you and have you in the studio and everything.
It's a joy to be here.
Yeah. There's that saying, our job is not to feel good, but to get good at feeling. And I'm just curious how you think about the emotional body and emotions and how they lead to physiological dysfunction, and how there's parts of us that are just yearning to be felt fully. Because I've had many friends who've had psoriasis or a rash or some sort of persistent, thing happening with their body. And they did an emotional release session, or they fully felt something, and then instantly within overnight or a couple of days, it completely goes away, which just seems like a miracle, but it's just how things function.
Yeah.
And so any other thoughts of how emotions tie into that process?
Absolutely. This feeling code that you referenced in the book is about allowing people to move from emotional states to feeling states. Think of it like we're designed to be in this feeling state. We're supposed to be present with self constantly, all of it. We were supposed to be, raised in a culture that was doing that, and the indigenous peoples were much more inclined to this. And, we've just been carried away for many reasons outside of that system, of that flow. And so what happens when we're not using that bandwidth of energies that is the emotional body, when we're not using it the way that it was meant to be used, which is the feeling body, if we're not using it as a feeling body and sensing and perceiving all parts of self and embracing them and noticing when we start to withdraw, when we're, just a toddler, that we're in environments that teach us to not withdraw, but to just open your heart and lean right back into that and keep going. If we're not taught to do that, we shut down the system. We sort of regulate it down into a lower vibrational expression of itself. And so this feeling body in a lower vibrational expression of itself comes out as emotion. It's like a default system. So that if I'm not paying attention to the felt sense of truth as it's moving through me, and I shut it down, I'm going to have an emotional reaction. And if I gather enough of those emotional reactions, I'll eventually have an emotional outburst or breakdown. And in the midst of the emotional outburst or breakdown, I have a possibility of dropping back into that deep sense of feeling that will actually be the healer. And so by default, we end up having these emotional breakdowns or what have you that bring us into our heart, buckle us over, send us, to the bed or to something, to seeking some sort of reprieve. And by design, it's going to default and open us back up into our feeling self. We're just going to lay there and feel sorry for ourselves. Even if we're feeling sorry for ourselves, at least we're feeling instead of constantly shoving it under and just in a modality of survivorship, moving past it and sweeping it under the rug. So what we're doing is saying, let's feel more. So when we learn to do that consciously and intentionally, there is an experience of deep joy. It's not that you don't have emotion, for goodness sakes. It's there. We're made of bliss. We're meant to be experiencing joy, right? And if we release those layers and drop into the true self, it's the healer, and it's joyful, and it is Ananda. It's this true essence. And in that healing state, skin issues, digestive issues, sinus issues, headaches, that's what it was for me, they disappear because we're dropping into the true self and allowing for that full expression to continue to do its thing out through the layers of all of the layers of our being, right out to the surface of our physiology. And so I think that feeling is one of the most potent things. It is the most potent thing, I would say, that we can do on a physical level to open the floodgates for this continuum, this quantum flow that is trying to happen through us, as it is through everything, as it is through the trees and through the fauna and flora on our beautiful planet. It's happening without interference. So it can be also that for us. So there's feelings and emotions, they belong to the same bandwidth. One is a higher use than the other of that bandwidth of energies. One is the ultimate use of it is to feel and sense and perceive these 11 billion bits of information, as well as our own unpacking of emotions that have been shoved down by misinterpretation of what we were supposed to be doing in those early years as we arrived.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's great. It's such an important reminder. When I think of what you just shared, and you've been kind of alluding to it throughout with the toroidal field, with the Sushumna channel, in terms of our energetic makeup and circuitry, how would you explain to somebody that doesn't know, like hasn't really heard of any of it, somebody who's like in their teenage years maybe, like what would you say are the most important things to understand about our energetic circuitry and what it is, from the nadis to like however much detail you want to get into?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so if you didn't know anything about nadis or meridians or any of that, or chakras or energy centers at the Sushumna, this main course that's pouring through your system, I would just describe it like there is a flow of energy that built your body and in the developing embryo, and it knew what it was doing, and it still does. So the same thing that built your body can heal your body. And what you have to do is get curious about that. You can learn a lot about it through your own experience. You don't have to open a book. You don't have to do anything. You could just walk through life and pay attention on the inside of your body all day long, just with one eye on the inside and the other on your path. Pay attention to what's going on. And as your path is, delivering stressful things to you, notice how it feels in your body. As your path is, saying, hey, we won the whatever, and you feel excited about something, pay attention to how you feel in your body. When somebody says, what do you want to do about blah, 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 and you don't have any idea, pay attention to how that feels in your body. Somebody else says, hey, do you want to go join us? We're going out to this thing. And you're like, yes. How does that feel in your body? If you build a repertoire, a library of felt sensation in the body, you're going to steward your way into waking yourself up, being able to heal yourself by being present to what's true for you, And if a lot of things seem to be shutting you down or causing you to want to back away, you become curious about that. And you ask a question. I wonder where in my body energy could be flowing more freely that would allow me to feel more comfortable going to do that thing that looks like fun, but I'm a little freaked out to go do it. It's a little too much for me, but I want to. So where in my body could I let energy flow more freely that would allow for me to be more comfortable in those kinds of situations? And as simple as that, it will start. If we know how to direct the mind into serving this system instead of interrupting it and pigeonholing us or compartmentalizing us in some way, by design, we're going to heal. We're going to flow. So it's a way to get started. And as we begin that, we start to feel more stable in more types of situations. We start to have some level of comfort that we just didn't have before. And it translates into new ideas and accepting new invitations and coming up with new projects that are more beneficial to more people and to ourselves. And so we become a part of something instead of a part from it.
It's a great breakdown. Yeah. What you said about the energy that built us can heal us. And like we are the self-organizing system where the body's intelligence can do its thing when it's allowed to do so is a really welcoming reminder.
Yeah.
Because it returns our power back to us in a state, in a society that is very yang, overly sympathetic, very masculine in many ways, to like go back into the yin and the parasympathetic and allowing balance and harmony to return back in the body and allowing it to heal itself. And it's amazing, and it's cool to see what it opens up in terms of inspiration and intuition and what it magnetizes to us.
Yeah, I think that if we knew that by design we are harmonious, we are by design. Our starting place is that. So what we have to do, it's a novel thought to think all I have to do to heal is to stop doing what I've been doing to make myself sick. Because most of it's unconscious, right? We don't know. If people knew,
right,
they wouldn't do that. But we don't know. But the body speaks the unconscious. It's the translator between the infinite possibility and what we think is possible. And the body will show us how to translate that information and hear this language of the soul that's trying to speak. And so by these areas of discomfort in the body, or these areas of openings or being shut down in a variety of ways, we begin to build a language that is an assistant. There's this collaboration that's happening, and all of a sudden the mind doesn't feel alone. Part of the reasons that we get into anxiety and stress and fear is that we've identified as the mind. We land, we splat, mind, body, breath, go all these different directions. We identify as the mind, and we put too much emphasis there. And the next thing you know, it feels all alone. It feels responsible for everything. We're asking it to do something it wasn't built to do. It's supposed to be serving something greater than itself. And so it invents a story and serves the story. It's like, I know I'm a servant. What do I serve? So it invents a false version of self and serves that because nobody told it to do otherwise. So as we're welcoming it back home, as we pull the mind back in and love the one who thinks that way, love the part of us that is judging or judging ourselves, or that is afraid, or that is angry, or that is whatever, we start to open up another integration of mind, body, and breath working together again. And when they do, the mind is now stabilized. It can function back in alpha frequency, which brings it back to its natural state where it can be available to the nuances that are trying to rise up through us, the inner knowings and the wisdoms that are trying to surface, but we've not been home to hear them. We've been off in the future, projecting ourselves out into predicting and preventing and all this kind of stuff. Too much masculine energy. It's time to come home. So the yin, the yang combination that happens back here generates this sattvic sense about who we are, this sacred harmony about the truth of our being. And under those conditions, the body is naturally designed to heal. It will heal. It knows what it's doing. Totally knows what it's doing. It's just a matter of us not stressing it. It's like going down the highway in first gear, forever. the system's going to strain. It's just not built to do that. So we learn how to shift and drop into this flow that is intended.
A big part of shifting into that flow, as you said, mind, body, and breath. I want to talk about the breath a little bit now, because with every thought that we have, with every story that we have, it correlates. In the Buddhist tradition, they talk about two prominent things, which is a biochemical sensation somewhere in the body, like every thought that we have or perception, and then an abnormality in the breath. Often subperceptual, there will be a change in our breathing patterns, where in the diaphragm and the depth of it and so on, whether it's nasally or through the mouth. And so it's so sad that we aren't given the user manual of our body and how each nostril correlates to different parts of the parasympathetic and sympathetic system, and how important it is to breathe through our nose, and the capacity our breath has to move energy. And so there's just so many things we're not taught about the fundamental essence of who we are and our life force energy and how to breathe. And so when you think of the breath as it is a bridge through so many of these things we're talking to, what are some of the most important things to remind us all about the breath?
Yes, beautiful. So the regulation of all systems of the body is enhanced by proper breathing. And as we learn to be present, we'll be aware of how we are breathing. As I was talking about, to the teenager or to the beginner who's trying to understand these ideas, just thinking about one eye on the inside and one eye on the path, one of the things that we'll start to notice is, am I breathing? And one of the most common things that people will recognize is that they're not, that they are holding their breath, and that they're resisting and they're shutting down, and because they're overly functioning in a focusing sort of way in the mind. They're driving the mind into the predominance in their system. And I'm not talking about the witness observing mind. I'm talking about the thinking, analytical, driving, predicting, projecting mind. And while it serves some beautiful things, too much of a good thing becomes a not good thing. So one of the things that people will notice is that they're not breathing, and to remember to breathe in the belly, of course. I also highly encourage people to breathe from beyond the body to within the body to beyond the body, meaning inhale from beyond the body and exhale to beyond the body.
What does that feel like to you?
So it might be a spherical breathing. It might be a central channel breathing. So for instance, I'll invite people to breathe from overhead. Just breathe from above your head as if you're breathing right down through the center of your brain, through the crown chakra, through the center of your crown, through the center of the brain, through the throat, to the heart, all the way to the belly. Just draw a breath. And it feels weird at first. He's like, I don't breathe in my head. So do. Just begin. Just intend it. And because there's an energy flow that is happening in that exact pattern. And that energy flow we would call spirit, or we would call it bioenergetic flow. We would call it quantum energy. However we want to speak about it. Bioenergetics knows that we can measure a flow of energy that comes down through the crown of the heart, the throat, into the throat, the heart, into the belly on an inhale. And then as we exhale down through the gut, through the tip of the spine, into the earth. And now inhale up from the earth, right up through the tip of the spine, into the belly. Big inhale. Pull your shoulder blades together, drop them down, and exhale from the belly up through the heart, through the throat, to the center of the brain, and out the top of the head. So then we would inhale from overhead, through the center of the brain, down through the throat, to the chest, to the belly, into the body, and then exhale to beyond the body, down through the tip of the spine and into the earth. And then inhale up from the earth, up through the tip of the spine, into the belly, and exhale to beyond the body, up through the heart, and through the throat, to the center of the brain, and out the top of the head. So that is dissolving the barrier between me and the rest, okay? Me and other. And so if I continue to breathe that way, it will change how I perceive self. We become a channel rather than an isolated separate self. We become a part of a continuum that is flowing from the unified field all the way funneling, channeling down to the earth, generating this whole toric field, projecting out into the world, and we're breathing in collaboration with that flow. We want to do that. It might also feel like a spherical breath. Someone inhales in the belly, keep inhaling into the chest, inhale a big sphere bigger than the body, and then exhale in every direction. Beside you, left, right, above, below, in front, behind. Inhale from every direction, right into the belly. Keep inhaling in through the solar plexus up into the upper chest. Inhale bigger than the body, and exhale in every direction. Inhale from every direction into the belly, up through the solar plexus, top of the lungs, bigger than the body. Exhale in every direction. It becomes this spherical breathing. Rumi would I said that like I knew him, like he used to talk about this all the time.
Rumi.
Me and Rum.
What a lad.
Would speak about the door is round and open. Do not go back to sleep. And it is a doorway through the dimensions. When I have gotten into these states, sometimes in very unexpected moments, this breath would happen, and it would be breathing me, and all of a sudden, I could see energy fields around people. I could see through what was going on, and it was dissolving the barriers between the things that we perceive as separate, because they're not. There's really only one field here. So the breath in that fashion allows us to establish a reconnection with a greater reality. Instead of being a separate self walking through a greater reality, I am part of that greater reality. I am that. And then as it differentiates down into physical function and the physiology of it all, yes, the different nostrils switch patterns of breathing automatically in an hour's time. It will spend minutes over on the right and then minutes over on the left, and then for a few minutes it will be in both, and then it will start a cycle over again. And it's constantly regulating all of the efforts that both components of the autonomic nervous system are responsible for, and making necessary contributions to our uprightedness and our movement and engaging in the world. It's just that, the sympathetic system has gotten a bad rap, once we realized, it's all about the autonomic system, that bad sympathetic system, it's raging out of control. Yes, it is, but it's not, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We need those aspects of the system as well that generate the initiation of the movement of any system in your body. It's part of a very large principle that is quite beautiful, in harmony, in balance with the other. So breathing in the belly, opening the heart, breathing in the belly first, and then working our way into these upper lobes of the lungs is also important. We've emphasized in the last many decades belly breathing, which I 100% concur will change someone's life if they will just learn to belly breathe. If they belly breathe and then stretch open the solar plexus, it's going to soften their mind, their defensive, protective, guarding mind, much more readily, because the solar plexus is the seat of the mental body, just like we talked about this gut below the navel is the seat of the emotional body, the feeling body. We want to know how to get the mental body aligned with the feeling body so that it's not overriding the feeling body in our lives the way that it has been. And emphasizing this solar plexus softening is a beautiful thing that we can do with the breath to help our mind and our emotions come together so that we become more interested in this feeling self. It seems safer and more accessible. Seems like a better idea if I'm not running from a bear, that I could sit down and pay attention to how I feel. As long as there's a bear in the room with me and I perceive that that's true, even though there's no bear, I don't really want to stop and feel much. I just want to run or fight the bear. So in order to get the whole thing in harmony, we have to get the mind to recognize there's no bear. It's not a bear. And the sooner it can, by assistance through the breath, it can start to slow down the mind long enough to realize, you know what, in this moment, I'm okay. I actually, in this present moment, am fine. And as such, then the breath, in illuminating this mind-body connection, facilitates our ability to recognize that I'm okay. I don't need to know ahead of time. I'm flexible. I can go wherever we need to go. I can talk about whatever I need to talk about, or I can go do whatever I need to do. And if it's not on my schedule or it wasn't in the plan, I become spontaneous and free because these components of my system are now working together. And in that moment, then we can direct our attention to that feeling self and do the work we were speaking about earlier. The breath facilitates that. The breath is a catalyst. I use these two terms with it. The breath of loving presence. So if it's a breath, it's going to help heal and integrate and bring you into a different reality. If you're breathing consciously. If it is loving, it will do even more, because love is the universal solvent. It's the vibrational frequency that is behind everything that we're looking at and feeling and touching and walking through. It's the first vibration when you compress the unified field coming toward physical form. The very first vibration compression creates a vibration. And that vibration is love. So everything else is built on love on its way to physical form. So let me just say a minute about what I mean by that. If you take the unified field and you start compressing that energy, you eventually get physical form. So the chair we're sitting in, it's energy just compressed. And this body that we're in is energy, it's just compressed. The water that we're drinking is energy, it's just compressed just a little less than the chair we're sitting in, obviously. So the breath blends those worlds. When it's loving, what we recognize is that unified field, when we start compressing it, it creates a vibration. The first compression creates a vibration that we call love. It's the vibration that we know as love. That's why we're so interested in love. That's why we love love, because it's the bottom line of everything. So, and then the presence in our body. If our conscious presence is in the body and we're breathing in these ways, it cannot not turn on the healer within. It does. It just automatically does, because it's the calling card for that innate intelligence to do its assessments and do its healing and let things unfold in such beautiful ways.
I love the invitation to work with the breath, because it's something that we can all do in this moment immediately and requires no belief, no thought system, and has immediate changes in our whole system, mind, body, energy. And I love that you shared both of those in your practice of like the different types of breathing to be able to ground in and move these energies. And there was kind of a period of life where I really like dove deeper into different types of breathwork practices, and also a lot of other ancillary supportive areas of focus in life, from nutrition to all these things, to like really purify the system. As of course, like breathing deep allows you to let go of previous like mental stories that you've had, and as you do the inner work and release some of those things that you've emotionally tied to, it also leads to deeper breaths. And so they play back and forth with each other, right?
Yeah.
And it's just incredible what happens to the sensitivity of our system as we deepen and kind of go back to our natural breath and find that deeper sense of peace within ourselves. And what we begin to notice in our outer environment and our inner environment when that sensitivity is raised. And this can lead to amazing state experiences. Like I've had quite spontaneous like energetic uprisings and like what felt like energetic kind of orgasmic, sensations and moments, both spontaneously like on plane rides while I'm in the middle of my sleep, just throughout the day. And how I would just describe it is like complete bliss in every cell of my body that are like humming at the frequency of love. Mm-hmm. And it feels so exuberant and also very baffling, like coming out of it, like it, I've always like hadn't known what to really make of it, because it's so, it's such a wild experience that you really can't use with words to explain.
Yes.
But over the years, I've learned, and I'm still on my journey of grounding that in and working with the system as energy like has uprises, and to be able to bring it back down and have more control over it. There is this concept of like, we're trying to be ascended masters. And I love how you invite the descended masters perspective. And So as people that start to deepen on their path, they start to work with the breath, they understand themselves as an energetic being, they have practices that support them in doing so, and they have these experiences where the energy is uprising. Oftentimes it can lead to kind of floaty energy, a lot of energy in the upper centers, and the mastery comes in, bringing it back down into the body and grounding it and integrating it, rooting it into our system as a deeper knowing. And so I'm curious, how would you explain the importance of kind of integrating and, as you say, becoming descended masters?
Mm-hmm. 100% focus in that department would help everyone. Even if people aren't having these ecstatic experiences like what you're describing, if they are overthinking, they're actually masking the same part of them that if they could harmonize their mind with everything we're speaking about, they too would experience these ecstatic moments like what you're describing. The way that we work with it when we don't know what's going on is we start using the mind to contain things. So we overthink and we overfocus and we're super serious and we're trying to, make life happen and strategize and all those types of things. And when we begin to recognize that there's something missing, and then we start seeking, and then we start finding systems and patterns and practices and components of the awakening process that work for us, we will start to experience more and more of what you're describing. And the way to facilitate that happening is to constantly be aware of the depths of you that extend into the earth. And this has been kind of left out of our conversations in lots of arenas in terms of spirituality, definitely in religion, in terms of thinking of how we're going to, perceiving how we progress in the world. If we take out of the equation the depths of our root, we limit the heights that we will ever achieve. Think of it like I have to root to rise. So the tree sends the roots down and then it grows higher. Deeper roots, the tree can grow higher. And so what we have to do is always be, in fact, I'm writing a book on this right now, okay? So it's about the depths of our rootedness and understanding the wholeness of our being. So when we start in with these practices, and they do start uplifting and elevating and bringing this ecstatic essence that sends us into what feels like an altered state, the key thing for us to do in those moments is to bring our attention, not abandon what's happening, but take one eye, meaning part of our attention, into the body. And not just into the body. I teach these anchor points that people can use to anchor themselves in the body, and then also to breathe deeper into the earth as if it is an extension of you, because it is. And just like the heavens are an extension of us, the earth is an extension of us as well. And so people are like, wow, really? No, I thought I was supposed to elevate to these high, higher realms and be able to perceive in this way. Once you do, the very biggest thing on your mind is going to be, I got to get in the body. I got to land this. And so the key is do them incrementally and allow the deepening of your rootedness to facilitate the heightening of your consciousness. Mm-hmm. But people, in our world today, they just want to get the job done, just get me there. And so they'll do anything, they're going for out-of-body experiences in one way or another and having them, which is fine. But I find that if people don't build the circuitry to embody what they're experiencing, they just become addicted and they just want to do it again and they want to get out of the body again and again and again. And it can make them less functional here, So to become more functional here and to benefit from these exalted experiences that we're having, rooting, grounding, deepening, embodying, and using the earth to help you ground and embody. So the next time one of these ecstatic moments is coming over you, just bring your attention into the earth. If you're on a plane and you're 30,000 feet, just bring your attention into the earth from where you are, because none of it's real. There's really no plane. There's really, none of this is really happening. But if you will, in that moment, bring your attention into the earth while allowing the ecstatic experience to continue, It is an expression of an integrated kundalini that is happening. It's the great integrator that is occurring. And when it connects the dots, this electric body just animates. And it is, as it animates, you become fortified with a higher realm version of who you are. And as you anchor and ground with your consciousness in that moment, you're going to be able to sustain what you're experiencing. Because that ecstatic moment isn't just a physiological sensation, although that's what we're experiencing. It is the influx of higher states of consciousness being allowed to drop in, to descend in a masterful way into this body form that you are moving around inside of at this time, in space and time. So in order to glean from it everything that you can, you bring your attention down into the earth at the same time that you're having this experience, and watch what happens. I can't wait to see what happens with you.
Yeah, no, this is amazing. I think it's Dante's image of like the tree's roots that go to hell and the branches that go to heaven, and in many ways, like the deeper our roots are, the higher the branches can go. And so, when we're talking about these different experiences, so we can have an expanded state experience, which people at any stage of consciousness could have. You can have an exalted state, a blissful experience. You'll perceive it accordingly to what stage of consciousness you're at and stage of development. But then also like the fortification is the word you use, of like actually embodying those states as a normal stage of how you go, and your normal day-to-day experience of life becomes elevated from that place when it's integrated into the body. And so I love the invitation you have to root this in, ground this in. I do feel that there are many teachers and systems and retreats that people can go to chase different state experiences where they haven't built the circuitry of the subtle body and that kind of energetic anatomy to be able to hold sustained changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it can actually be kind of disconcerting and a little bit like dangerous to be able to push people beyond these to go for these certain state experiences beyond their body's capacity to do it, and hold it. And so that can be dangerous in some sense. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
Very much agree. It's something I find myself speaking to a lot in the coursework that I'm teaching and working with people. Questions come all the time about, should I this, should I that? And the difference between a state change and a different stage in your own evolution, I think Ken Wilber spoke about this, that this difference is so significant. My personal experience is 100% agree with the fact that looking for a state change may open you to something. And if you don't have the circuitry to translate what you're experiencing there, it can actually cause the psyche to be more challenged because it doesn't have a grounded reference point to process the information that it's perceiving. And it can cause more anxiety or dissonance in the field, in the system. So when we bring this into the body is this grand neutrality that just centralizes and allows for the alchemizing of all things that we are experiencing in a harmonious way. It operates it always tells the truth. The body isn't delusional. The mind, another story. But the body will ground the mind and allow you to translate. So when we build the circuitry to support who and what we are at this moment now, and we're meditating and we're opening to things in a natural way, we're going to drink in more and more high frequency vibration. And if we know what to do to anchor and embody and integrate those new high frequency versions of ourselves, our body then illuminates more. It vibrates at a higher frequency. Disease conditions don't exist in these higher frequencies. The grudges that we hold mentally and emotionally can't be sustained in these higher frequencies. When we're infusing this into our nervous system and into our subconscious cellular memory and into the cerebellum that is housing all of this, other aspects of memory, and the amygdala and hippocampus are now floating in an environment that is of a higher nature, they don't care about these old conclusions that we drew. They can't hold themselves together. They dissipate, they disperse, it reconstructs who we are if we're bringing it to the body, grounding it and integrating with every elevated state that we ever have. So if someone is pursuing a way to change their state, and my mind just went to, 30 years ago, we were coached to change your state. If you're having a hard time, just change your state. Just get in there and whatever it takes, just change your state. It's like, yeah, what we built was an ability to divert and to deflect and to deny because we weren't addressing why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? And we weren't understanding that the best way to answer that question is to not ask why, but to ask where and to be present with ourselves in a way that we weren't present before and allow that to be now included in the recipe of my groundedness, of who I am, my reference point, my come from. When we start to embrace those things and build the circuitry for that, we're building the circuitry for this subtle self to now resonate on a higher and higher level all the time. And in that, it finds its ability to enliven, enlighten, and embody the wholeness of our being. A Buddhic consciousness, a Christic consciousness, these elevated states of illumination that are able to be embodied as well. Thousands of years ago, anyone could be Buddha. These are the words of the Buddha, right? So what does this mean? It means get busy not being so busy and start feeling into what is really true for you. And we can open the doors for this to happen for us.
Yeah, I think it allows us to stop forcing and pushing for these different state experiences. And I get this image of just like an oscillating, it's like the inhale and the exhale, the contraction, the expansion, the moment of revelation and the moment of integration, and how these are like forces that are like the Ida and Pingala, like, weaving together to slowly build and expand the vessel of our cup, for example, for water or for divine consciousness or, any word you want to use to be able to hold it. And so it's an important reminder to like realize that this path takes time and we all have different starting points in terms of where, we were from our family and how we developed mentally, physically, energetically. And as we start to expand our capacity, then there's not a single area of life that doesn't improve from that standpoint,
100%. We are a vessel. And the reason that the cup runneth over has been a statement that has, that lingers, that stays, is that as we gather ourselves into this deep core self, we recognize there is a constant pouring in of this higher frequency energy. It's constantly feeding this whole system. And as we focus on becoming the vessel and filling this vessel and becoming that which is filling the vessel, we become this light that builds and fills until it opens that trap door between the subconscious and the conscious, and we arrive into these higher states in a very grounded and embodied nature and fashion. And as such, when the cup runneth over, I think that when those words were initially stated, it was referencing this toric field that was flowing because the vessel was filling and it was pouring out from us in a state of abundance, as if pouring in from the divine, if you will, and filling this vessel that we are, and then giving us an opportunity to recognize, I too am what's in the vessel, what is filling the vessel, not just the vessel. I'm not just the vehicle. I'm the essence that is filling this vehicle, that actually built this vehicle so that it could have an experience of itself here. And so when we become that one, all as a byproduct of releasing, letting go, those surface levels, the protective personality dropping into the true essential self, discovering it, sitting in the silence with it, breathing there, then we start to recognize, whoa, there's some sensations in here. Whoa, there's some light in here. There's some effervescence. There's some this ecstatic ananda that you're experiencing and sharing about. And that is a sign that you're onto it. You're onto it. And as you continue to let this vessel fill, what pours over is you. You start to recognize the true authentic self isn't just a station that I find. It's this living, breathing, fluid, liquid, lighted, loving presence that's pouring out into this realm as the solution itself.
That invites such a reverence to the body and mind as it is a vessel for our true nature to be held in. We get to have this experience of ourself, expand the capacity for it. And then the great sages of our time, whether it's Buddha or Christ, they are individuals, you would say then, that have allowed themselves to expand their vessel to then realize that they are the divine consciousness that animates it. And it's so inspiring to be in the presence of, and also not just literally physically, which is of course a great luxury to be able to do so, but through the words and through the teachings of these individuals, where their presence and what they shared emanates that love in which we originate from, and that light illuminates darkness wherever they go, in a sense. And so it's really inspiring when you see the spiral of growth, where we start to expand and recognize our true nature, what becomes available to us, and how we can support ourselves and those around us. And I think when we start to see progress, when we see momentum, and we see the fruits of this recognition, it becomes enticing to really devote our life to it more and more each day. And that's where things get really exciting, because then each day, each moment is an opportunity to be in the recognition of that and to live from that place. And our challenges and our struggles and strife then are perceived from a different place, as opportunities rather, for purification.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I'm loving that I'm hearing this back, and I'm constantly in that conversation when I get into the deep coursework, when I'm really able to speak with people. That's the speak. That's where it's at, right there. And so what a joy to be here with you and speak about these things. We see it differently in those moments. They're not stresses. It's not based in strife. It's another opportunity to experience another version of the creative essence that I am, to refine it and to polish it and to pour myself onto it as the solution, instead of trying to guard and protect myself from this issue that's headed my way. It's not that at all. It's completely different that we're perceiving what is actually going on here. It's that whole misperception that we were caught up in prior to that is the cause for all human suffering. It's right there. It's a perspective issue. That's it. It's just an illusionary way of perceiving that has us locked in this other realm, in this other reality. So when we start to realize, oh, I am that, I am the divine come here revealing, and give ourselves permission to even consider such a thing, we start operating as the solution on the planet instead of just another survivor.
That feeling where there's nothing you can't be with, that level of courageousness that somebody has on their path, where they can be with anything, they can presence anything, and they can deepen their breath in the face of any adversity. That to me is a truly powerful individual. And the more that we're recognizing ourselves and who we truly are in our essence, in our energy, the more that we can see when these challenges come, we don't turn away from it. We can actually look towards it and see the gifts in the disguise, in the shadow, in the darkness.
Yeah, we get to know a bigger version of ourselves because of it. It's not a problem that we're trying to solve. We welcome it, because I think it's like someone who's excellent at fencing, and I don't even know what I'm talking about, but because I've never even held a fencing sword in my hand, but they want to spar with someone who's excellent in order to, refine their awareness of their own capacity. And really that's why we come. We come here into this dimension where it's filled with props for us to polish and refine and develop. And if we could see it as that, it becomes a playground where we are coming to know the bigness of our being in ways that we wouldn't if we weren't in a place where you could have experience of the contrast of this dimension. So,
yeah, I think we all understand the image with like somebody who wants to get in physical shape and the resistance of weights at a gym that serve to break down the tissue and then rebuild. But somehow we lose the metaphor when we look at our life and the greater resistances in our life that, we might say we want to be loving or be patient or give grace. And yet we turn away from the bountiful opportunities that are actually allowing us to develop those qualities.
yes.
It's like in the face of the adversities where we actually are refined and have the capacity to grow into that part of ourselves.
Because we have a predetermined idea of what is good and what is bad. And so we go away from these obstacles and label them, and we miss the gift that they're offering right here in that moment that there would be a little friction. When high frequency energy hits the density of physical matter, there's friction. And so we are very high frequency energy. We're pure light coming into physical form. And so whenever we feel the friction, rather than turning away from it, we should realize that that's the moment where I'm actually infusing myself more into this physical dimension, which was the destiny when I started out the journey in the first place, was to embody. We're here trying to enlighten, but actually we're the light that's trying to embody. So if we would turn our attention to the embodiment piece, the whole thing would happen. We would have the experience of enlightenment because we would have an experience of self. We would know who we are, and what we're actually doing here is to come into this physical dimension and bring the light in, bring the high frequency energy in.
It's great. It's that progression of the realization from like first everything seems like it's just coming at me and life is happening to me, right? And then you start to dissolve the barriers between what is you and what is outside of you, and you start to see life as you and as it's moving through you. And it is just the most incredible recognition to experience life as life instead of me, and then there's this life outside of me. Right?
Exactly. Right. And it's in that moment that we're actually starting to experience the nuances of being the infinite. When we can be in any situation and embrace it and enjoy it and be in the adventure of it and find something else to love into and be about life in that way, we expand our awareness of who and what we are through the experiences that we're having, which is why I think we come to this dimension. It's just to have an experience of the fullness of Source itself.
Yeah. How else could it do it without differentiating itself? It's like the one consciousness just floating around now, looking through the eyes of Sue and Andre and everyone who's listening right now, getting to experience itself through one another. And that, I think, radically orients us in a different direction of what this life is and how to treat people and how to treat all life. It changes the position in which we live. And I think of how what becomes available to us in this recognition and this energy, how intuition and our sensitivity to the awareness of different intuitive hits and callings and things allow us to move more effortlessly into the direction where is just natural alignment for what we're here to be doing, how we uniquely have the capacity to serve. And I think it builds that positive momentum to where you start to change what you do and your behaviors become in alignment with that which you know. And that becomes a really important part of this whole path, because it's like, yes, we recognize the true essence, and then we're here to have this human experience, and we continue to serve and share with the world in recognition of our true self. And it just comes from a different place, which is exciting, because it almost, from what we're talking about, it can be sometimes perceived as like, oh, that's the end goal, and then the journey kind of stops. But then it's like, okay, we're still here in this human flesh suit, and we get to be animated by a deeper knowing, which is amazing. Things just change from the place in which they're done, I suppose.
Yes, it's the biggest thing that I have experienced in my life in the last 25 years since these openings started happening, is that I'm doing a lot of the similar things, but I'm having an entirely different experience. It's a different person doing them. I'm sitting in a different seat inside of it, and I'm so much more relaxed. I mean, I was terrified as a kid. I slept on the floor of my closet just trying to be safe, and that that my life has transformed so much is completely a testament to what we're speaking about here. It's a byproduct of having enough of that, dropping in, due to pain, making a choice to, pursue some different understanding of who I am and what life is all about. And then things just opening up so dramatically. And, when people ask me, I don't know my purpose, or I don't know what I should be doing, or my focus is, it's right here where you're talking. If we just begin, we start asking that question from a different place. And when we calm down enough, when we can find the stillness enough to be more interested in this, the cultivation of this, the purpose on the planet becomes obvious as a byproduct of that. Instead of trying to pursue a vocation that's reflective of a higher purpose and so forth, pursue your attention inward. Withdraw your senses into your deep core self and discover that version of you. When the mind lights up on that, the obvious, it becomes obvious what to do. You invent yourself every day as you're going along. It reveals itself as you come upon the circumstances that you were seeking in the first place, and everything unfolds itself. We just have to get on this wave that allows for that to happen.
It's so good, and I just feel like you kind of reference love as sort of this existential stance in which is like enables all of this to occur in the first place. And it feels like in those exalted states, you start to actually perceive how that is so. And as you lead into more heart-brain coherence, and your mind and body start to actually work as one unit and how they were designed to, I'm just curious, any thoughts you have on what love is as a kind of enabler for all of this?
Yeah, I think it's the universal solvent is how I refer to it. And I don't mean it as a sentiment. It's a realm. It's a version of life. Like we have a mental body driven realm that everyone is very familiar with in this world right now. We're driven by honoring the mental body over all things. And yet we're trying to evolve. And what we're evolving to is a species that is based in love instead of based in thinking, that our higher value becomes unity. We strive for unity consciousness. We're interested in unifying. We're interested in healing, which is a byproduct of unifying. We're interested in relationship, which is an example of unifying. We're trying to care about each other instead of fighting about differentiated values and such. But what I'm talking about is it's a realm, it's a reality. There's a version of life that is based in the unifying principle, the magnetism that we know of as love, not as romantic love, but the love of life itself. It's like the light that dances on the water when the sun is shining just right and you see it and it's just so mesmerizing, or the gentle breeze that hits your face at just, in the morning, or something along those lines where there's this freshness and tenderness to the air. The misty substance as I was walking into the studio today, there's, we're kind of in the clouds today, and it was just the presence of that is it's presence. It's love beauty. And it is the same as the dew on the grass, or the sparkling eye of a newborn, or this essence that is so immense and magnificent and beautiful. And it is an emanation of the divine, of the multiple realms combining. And so that's the love I'm speaking of, the breath of loving presence. It's just this appreciation of what is right here, this moment. When we can develop that in our awareness and truly notice ourselves noticing the beauty of life. I interrupt my own thoughts all the time with, oh my God, look at that. Look at this, how beautiful. Look at this. Oh, can you imagine? I'm constantly saying it out loud to whoever I'm around. And they're like, yeah. And it's like, no. I mean it. This is like really magnificent and beautiful. And so And so the people around me now, they get it, and they're like noticing those things too, and mentioning them out loud, just to make me feel better. But it's a state of being that is just, it's gratitude, but it's more appreciate. It's the knowingness of the beauty that is upon us, the knowingness of this miracle that is unfolding all the time. It's beyond logic. It's beyond anything that is linear. It's this essence that is here. And when we can start to explore that and cultivate that, now we're in the space where everything that we're speaking about today becomes possible for someone. I truly believe that that's why devotion works for people. When they're devoted to their practice, their meditation, or their breathwork practice, or they're devoted to their relationship, or devoted to anything. It doesn't really matter. What matters is the vibration of devotion. What matters is that your mind and your heart are working together. It cultivates something very different than discipline. We can discipline the mind, but when the heart is in it and it becomes devotional, it's a totally different experience. You can do the same practice, but many times people will start it as a discipline, but then they start to like how it feels. And so then they become devoted to doing it. And then they become fussy if they don't get to do it, right? Right in there, they're starting to cultivate the mix of the heart and the mind together in action. And if they could memorize, and they could, what that feels like in the body, they can come from that vibration consciously and intentionally, anytime, any moment, all the moments. And when you do, you start making different decisions. You start saying, yes, thank you, I'll participate. Or you say, thank you, no, that's just not, it's not in alignment. Instead of the mind that's constantly searching for everything that would be smart to do and what everybody else is doing and all of that, you're seated in a different world, living right in there, shoulder to shoulder with everybody, driving down the same streets, having dinner at the same restaurants, having the same friends for that matter, but you're a different individual having that experience, one that is calm and peaceful and joyous and adventurous and spontaneous and filled with delight and beauty and possibility. That's what we're supposed to be doing, in my opinion.
That shift from discipline to devotion is, it's so viscerally felt when you bring your heart into, for example, a meditation practice. It transforms from mundane to this like magical thing because it's no longer force, it's actually for the love of it. And I think that that just a reminder to notice and witness and be present to the beauty that's around us in every given moment. It stops becoming a spiritual practice that we do and it starts becoming a spiritual reality that we are.
It's life. Yeah.
And it is quite freeing how when you perceive the level of intelligence and beauty and the design that is in with all nature and life around you, you no longer are under the illusion of pursuing someday, one day in the future where your like ideal life is going to be. Like happiness isn't something that you're in the pursuit of anymore. It's in the recognition available to us in every moment. And that is a free individual. You're no longer chained to the shackles of your attachments. You're really free to be witness to all the beauty of life around you. And the invitation that you've given so many times throughout this whole conversation of integrating it into a daily experience within your life and not this kind of one-time exalted state experience, which are great for reference points, but bringing it back into daily practice is just a really important reminder. And it makes me think of heaven, earth, instead of having it heaven on earth, as you spoke to earlier, realizing heaven is earth. And so as you want to share any kind of thoughts on that, the last really closing line of direction of thought that I want to share or, would love to have you speak to is earth as sort of an energetic body and where humanity is kind of all little nodal points on this being that is Mother Earth. I'm curious what your thoughts are as a shifting collective consciousness is happening and more people wake up to this recognition. What you foresee coming, happening, and shifting, both what you have in your practice and your work with your retreats and your people that you've been working with, but then also what's to come. So I'll just kind of leave it to you there for any thoughts you want to share.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mother Earth is a presentation of this beautiful, divine, feminine energy that is constantly nurturing, constantly there, constantly magnetizing, allowing through the forces of gravity inside of this whole larger spectrum. It is the nest in which we reside, and Mother Nature, Mother Earth, this beautiful quality of allowing us to awaken, allowing us to become. As I said, I think that the earth is our body, and it is just like the heavens are our mind. That as we really start to awaken, the immaculate mind is this cosmic universal intelligence that is coming into form, and Mother Earth is that which is big enough to hold this presence in such a manner that we have the ability to begin to animate the bridge as the bridge between them, meaning we have the opportunity to live in the combination of these massive cosmic principles and these divine qualities that heaven and earth represent. And so I think that as our species evolves, and even though sometimes it doesn't feel like we're moving very quickly in that process, we are. And we are evolving to the point where we know there are choices to make. We know that caring more is essential, that finding our hearts instead of just our minds being in charge is essential for our continued support of the earth and nature as we know it, and also necessary for our own evolution, period. It's just essential that until we start allowing our heart and our mind to be in equanimity with one another, we can never find that sattvic experience. We can't, it won't happen. And so we're evolving to those choice points. We recognize that today is an important moment, that I choose to allow the harmonization of my heart and my mind. So if the heavens were the mind, the earth would be the heart, would be the body, the loving space in which this infinite potential can formulate itself into an existence that is the expression of the divine in balance. So we're at a point where we get to pick, are we going to do that or are we not? Some will and some won't. And those that will, I feel, are moving into a new role in this world. And the role that they will be in, whereas it used to be considered meek or shy or in the background or insignificant in some way, is going to be what leads humanity into the evolution that is before them. The people who've thought they weren't enough or that they weren't the ones that should be out there, making a difference or having a voice, are needed now to bring this into harmony and into balance. And I see it happening with, I work with a lot of people all year long, and I see it happening where they're finding their voice and they're understanding that there's something that's been missing, and they have their finger on the pulse of that. They know it because they've been living more in observation than being out in the flash of things. And so in the midst of that, I think there's a beautiful unfoldment occurring. And I know that Mother Earth is going to be fine. It's humanity I get concerned about.
Yeah.
We worry about saving the planet. And, I sort of feel sometimes like, Mother Earth could just sort of shrug and, and that would be that. She'd still be fine. And we'd be trying to find another home, in terms of how that all fits together. But I know that there's a divine design to things, to everything. And what is happening right now, that we are pursuing things in the ways that we have that have threatened our planet in the ways that it has in the obvious, surface of the planet manner, is allowing us to evolve. It's allowing us to witness the fallacy of the choices that we've made and the priorities that we've held, and to reevaluate and to recognize that we can make a difference in all of the ways that we're trying to solve our own personal issues. Collectively, it solves what's happening on the planet as we each do. And so I think Mother Earth plays a deeper role in our own awakening than we have given her credit for. And I think the deeper we go into the heart of the Mother of the Earth herself, the closer we come to our own deep core wisdom, and the greater capacity we have to face our demons, or to resolve our issues, or to let go of that which has haunted us in the past. And I think that it is a next step that will be very valuable for humanity to pursue, a deeper route that allows us to branch out higher.
And there's that great joy in owning our responsibility, as we get to play a puzzle piece on that journey of, in many ways, Earth kind of evolving, transmuting to that next stage of evolution. And as a species, there is often great conflict, confusion, chaos right before a transmutation in our genetic code, and I think the more that you have an expanded awareness, the more that it's upon us to take responsibility for being a leader of the new Earth, so to speak, in many ways. Otherwise, not living in alignment and serving how we feel we have the capacity to will cause all sorts of suffering in our own internal psyche. So that invitation of responsibility, I think, is really important. And thank you so much for being a proponent of that, because I know you're empowering people to really do so. Yeah.
It's my great joy. It's the most beautiful life I could have ever imagined. It's more so than I ever dreamt of. And it's exactly why we're here, is to awaken to such things. So it's a joy. Thank you.
Yeah, amazing. I really, 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 and I say this often, but I really, really mean it. I love this conversation so much. This was really special. We dove into some amazing territory, and this is awesome.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
I do a lot of interviews and speak in a lot of places, and every once in a long while, I get to have a conversation like this. So thank you. It is you that gets to allow that to take place. So thank you for what you're doing in the world and bringing these deep and rich spaces to people to unfold and to discover more of who they are. There's nothing more valuable on the planet, I don't think.
Received. Thank you so much. It's the greatest joy. And I thoroughly have loved getting to connect with you and share this conversation with our digital worldwide family that gets to tune into these and that we get to feel. And so I'm looking forward to continued conversations. And thank you so much. The very last thing is I just want to let everyone know that they can find Dr. Sue's information and websites and stuff. We'll link down below. Is there anything else you want to share where people can find you, or anything else?
I'm pretty easy to find. I have YouTube and a website. We have a new website that's just posting, and so hopefully it'll be timed in such a manner that by this moment it will be ready for people to see. I have some introductory programs coming up that are very easy access for people to come in and start to understand more about what I'm doing and how to work with it for themselves. And so, but it's all there. I have lots and lots of offerings for everyone, and lots of complimentary things for people as well.
Amazing. Yeah, the Energy Codes book is also a great read and audio listen with more practices, I think, to accompany everything we've been speaking to. And I'm really looking forward to your new book next year that you're working on. So it's exciting. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Until next time, be well. Take care.